Swan Song. It's a really great name for a visual novel that details humanity's final moments after an earthquake ravages civilization. Brutality mixed with kindness, hope and despair, truths and lies. This beautiful story condenses the sweeping contradictions that define human history into one brief analogy that asks how we can be good creatures in such a cruel, evil world. Swan Song is also partially a porn game, but I'm here for the story. Totally the story, yes, not the boobies. Okay, now that we got that settled, let's start from the beginning. Swan Song was a visual novel originally released for the PC in Japan, 2005, and it's playable in English due to a translation release in 2010. The game has a lot going for it, but I think it really drops the ball in some key areas. Swan Song follows the tale of 6 characters, who all group together in a broken down church after a massive earthquake ravages their town completely on Christmas Eve, leaving very few survivors. The group of 6 eventually manages to reach a school, where many of the town's last survivors have regrouped. With death all around, and the winter storm getting worse and worse, the survivors band together to form a new civilization. However, it isn't long before human nature shows its true colors in this life and death situation, and our 6 characters each learn something about themselves and the world in humanity's last swan song. First, let's go over the characters. Tsukasa is the quiet main protagonist, and a very interesting character. He's a talented musician who sees through a lot of the bullshit that clouds this new world. He just sees past all that rhetoric and finds the truth. He's loyal to his friends and tries to be a decent human being in this world gone wrong, but he'll kill with little remorse if he needs to. I just like how blunt this guy was. He never minced words, and he was kind of charming in his own strange way. Just a fun, interesting protagonist. Yuka is the hot, wifeable one, so she's pretty boring until you get her backstory, which I can't spoil. Hibari is her friend, and is, at least initially, the resident bitch. One of those characters in every life or death situation game who has to just complain and make everyone's life difficult. But then you find out she's not really all that bad, she's got a good heart underneath it all. Yes, very original. Okay, that's unfair. She does have a little more development outside that, but there are better characters to get to. Tanamura. This guy's a really funny character, laid back, always cracking jokes in serious situations, but always calm and competent when he needs to be. I can see him being a pretty big fan favorite. Arrow is the first character I came across in a video game that's autistic, and I'm surprised at how maturely they handled her character. For the most part, there were some scenes that, you'll see. Being the character on the box, you'd think that she plays a bigger role in the story, but she really wasn't necessary at all. Yet for some strange reason, she always provided this kind of hope for these survivors. She doesn't know what's going on, and she couldn't care less about the weather. She's always bouncing around, representing life and hope for the group. At least that's how I interpreted it. I'm not quite sure about her. Takuma, this is my favorite character. The loser and otaku who learns to find some confidence in himself. That's not exactly why he's my favorite though, and I can't explain why without spoiling the hell out of the game, so I'll just leave it at that. If you play this game, really pay attention to him and his character arc, cause, well, you might not have much of a choice. That runs down the main 6 characters, but of course there's a lot more. One element I really liked about the characters is that they were pretty realistic. In fact, all of Swan Song carries this really plausible sense of realism, whether it's the characters trying to survive, strategizing an attack, or interacting with foreign groups. The realism made me much more invested in these characters and their struggles. No, the issues I have with Swan Song don't really stem from the characters or their dialogue. Like most other visual novels, the only gameplay in Swan Song is reading, along with some choices that can lead you to prosperity or not prosperity. Sometimes making the logical decision will bite you in the ass, but there's a handy save feature, so no worries, just jump back and make the other choice. My only issue with the choices is that there's no indication of how to get the true ending, so yeah, just Google it. Save your time. Now let's get into a critical analysis of the story. Firstly, I think it's a good story. There's a lot of action, drama, a few twists, and even some social commentary. Well, a lot of social commentary. It had a lot of really, really dark, gruesome moments where you just have to look at the screen and reread it over and over just to make sure that this was something that a human mind conceived and put to paper. Swan Song lives up to the name, with the bleak scenery always creating a sense of melancholy and death, but there's always a sense of beauty in it. Beauty and death, hope and despair, life finding a way. The story hits a lot of basic messages really well. The political commentary was actually really well done as well, though slightly overplayed and overdramatic. However, there are some key issues that really hold Swan Song back, at least for me. Firstly, the game is about 15 to 20 hours or so, but it felt a lot longer because there's a lot of useless scenes, the dialogue gets over-padded sometimes, there's just too much. They could have condensed this to 10 hours, and gotten a much more powerful, concentrated story instead of one that felt like it was dragging and reaching a bit. Characters spout philosophy too much sometimes, clearly just spitting out what the developers are trying to say. There were also some things that were just plain never explained, particularly the main disaster that started the story, and other elements surrounding that. Oh, and there was one big twist in the true ending that was just a slap to the face. It's so friggin' stupid that it made me think it was such stupid writing that it made me think that a Justin Bieber movie looked like Hitchcock caliber. Speaking of the true ending, this is one of the few times where I have to say that the regular ending was actually way better in my opinion. The regular ending is tragic, traumatic, and God did it take my breath away. It is one of the most beautiful, touching endings to a video game, period, sending home the messages the game was trying to get across pretty well in my opinion. However, the true ending is one of those super neat endings where everything's tied together with a pretty little bow. But for a game that looks at the true nature of mankind, it should have known better than to have this overly cutesy, true, happy, everybody goes home with smiles ending. Ugh. Okay, let's get into something that really bothered me, the hentai aspect of the game. Let's get one thing straight. I like sex. I have it. Totally. All the time. With many women. In multiple positions. I'm an expert at the sexing, and the bitches know this. My sex. It happens. Often. I don't have any issues with hentai. Whatever floats your boat, right? But the problem is that the hentai in Swan Song really serves almost no purpose. Hell, you remember that character I mentioned earlier? The autistic one? They actually put her on the front cover naked, and I don't understand why. It doesn't even just Japan, why? Why, guys? Come on. Really? The hentai in Swan Song just doesn't serve a purpose. Oh, what? This sexiness is supposed to show how close these characters are? Bullshit, the dialogue should do that. There's even a lot of pretty horrifying rape scenes, but again, you could just imply it, not show every gross detail. I went into Swan Song because I knew it was a serious, mature story, and that's the only thing I'll remember about the game. Not that it has boobies because I'm part of some supposedly stupid young male demographic who magically hasn't discovered internet pornography yet. It's just really unnecessary, that's all I'm saying, Swan Song. The graphics in the game were fantastic in my opinion. I like how the dialogue sequences showed portraits of the main characters simultaneously, creating a more of cinematic feeling, like you can see them debating and talking together. The locations were well designed and added to the themes of the story, and as I said, some moments, like the raft ride through a frozen wasteland early on, just took my breath away. Combined with the soundtrack, there were some great moments. The characters were well designed, and it was simply an aesthetically pleasing game. The music was also very good, which should be a given with a game that has song in the title, but what I really liked is that they didn't use a whole lot of music. There are some scenes where the sound effects alone created the atmosphere, and that was cool. There were a lot of songs, but there weren't a lot of them that were overplayed. Some songs were only played once or twice. In fact, I'd say they were underused. One weird thing was that there was a lot of scenes where the protagonists recalled moments of beautiful musical performances, but the scene is basically silent. I don't know if they were just too lazy to create the masterpieces they were describing, or it could be that they were trying to make you use your imagination. It was just weird. Anyhow, there's a lot of great musical pieces in the score, with the main theme being one of the most memorable for sure. In conclusion, I'm a little torn about Swan Song, but I still recommend it. The characters are great, the story is strong, but there are some chinks in the armor when it comes to pacing and some other choices. Also, it didn't need the porn. I would just skip all those scenes actually, just save your time. You get the point. And thankfully there is a skip feature, so at least it's easy to skip them. Swan Song is a beautiful game with a lot of messages about mankind that really hit home. Great moments, and it's a very memorable story. The characters are great as well. Like the way the game portrays human beings, Swan Song is not perfect. It makes some stupid mistakes sometimes, but there's just something really beautiful in the overall effort, and that makes this game a solid title. Check it out knowing that it has some flaws. Thanks for watching.